Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
Hey man, should I call you Mars, bro, on the
Uh,
podcast?
yeah, you can, or you can call me still. I know in the past I've been kind of like stickler about, hey, make sure you separate my real life persona.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Hip Hop and Homilies podcast, where we seek to explore the deeper meaning behind your favorite artists' dope tracks. For today's show, we'll be diving into a song from Taelor Gray's newest album, Can't Let It Go. Yeah. Without further ado, let's get it.
To that old time, take me to that old time church. Yeah. What's up, Swoop? Yeah. I've been growing up with choirs, the souls of black folk. I've been growing up inspired. I thought we had the answers. We were singing a Negro national anthem, the chorus and the vamping. Yeah, sometimes 3 to 4 hours went like minutes with that feeling in the crowd, and everybody knows.
All right, fellas. So we got to listen to the track, man. And so we usually start the show off doing a first take, where we just really talk about what are your first impressions of the track. So right off the jump, Zil, what do you think about the track, man?
It's a dope track. I'm a fan of that whole family.
All right, Sal, back to you, man. What you thought about the track, man?
Hey, man, you've been talking to me about Taelor Gray for a while. You and Zil. Zil, like he said, he's a fan of that family. For some time, I was really messing with Christian Gray. And, I hate to kind of divert from Taelor Gray on this because this is his song. But it was just like, that's kind of like my foundation in finding out who Taelor Gray is. Like, obviously through Christian Gray and then through you guys, like telling me like this Taelor Gray guy is pretty nice. So background, I hadn't listened to him a lot. So when you said that we were going to be reviewing this song, I was kind of excited to see, what it was, what he was all about. Getting into it. And he didn't disappoint with the track, man. He had them raw bars. And what I like about this genre or the potential of this genre is that people are more likely to, tell real stories and get introspective with you. Yeah. And we not, putting up a facade or whatever. And that still happens though, in the genre. It's a way to lack substance in this genre as well. Even though you're talking about God, you can still do it in a surface level type of way. Mm. So I was really just feeling the track. Like I'm big on content, but also I gotta sound good.
Can't let it go. And you can take me to that old time. Can't let it go. And you can take me to that old time. No, I can't let it go. So how I got over this.
Let's go ahead and move on to the next segment.
Let's do it. As individuals who have attended both black churches, multicultural churches, and white churches, which context do you love the most? What are the challenges you experience in these places? Anybody can jump in on that topic real quick. I'm not even on.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, man.
All right. You always got to check. I've learned in these Zoom meetings. So first and foremost, I love whatever church, black, white, multicultural, that does these two things. Love God and love neighbor. That's like the crux of just like the greatest two commandments. And from that, like when you love God, you're going to preach the Bible, you're going to preach the gospel, holiness, sovereignty of God. But this isn't like, so the true sovereignty of God, like God is sovereign over the United States of America. God is sovereign over the world. Like, God is just not the God of white people. God is not just the God of the United States or the Western world. God is sovereign over everything. So it's important for me to be in a church that preaches that and believes that and doesn't have that allegiance like with the nation. Like, it's cool to be excited about where you're from, but a lot of times I see churches and Christians take on the identityhood of American equaling Christianity. And there's a lot of ugliness in that.
So what I hear you saying, that there are essentials that we need to look at about what's really important about when we go to church. Do we love our neighbor? I mean, does the church love our neighbors? Are they active with when they do that? Are they loving their congregants well? But what has you guys' experience been when there's a church that does those things, or maybe says it does those things, but it doesn't? And for the listener, we are 3 Black males. But what has been you guys' experiences when you take that trip from or take that trip to a predominantly white church that says it does those things, loves neighbor and serves the community? What has been your experience? Maybe we can start off with you, Zil.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me. I just feel like it's gonna always be contextual. Like, I mean, I 100% agree with everything that Marcel or that Mars said earlier. Is so the love God, love your neighbor experience. It just looks different in those 3 different contexts. I feel like it might not match our expectations. It just looks different. Like, I just released my testimony on social media yesterday, and kind of going
50 threads long, Zil.
Huh?
It was 50 threads long.
Yeah, well, Twitter only gives you 130 characters.
You said I'm going in.
Yeah, so I mean, usually when I'm ready to do a convo like that, Twitter need to go ahead and notarize me so I can write more characters and stuff.
You trying to get blue check verified?
Bruh, yeah.
It's coming. It's coming.
Fast. But yeah, no, but like just going back to that, like, can I judge them based on what they feel their idea of loving their neighbor is? That's kind of what I'm getting at. Like, like from my expectation, do I feel like those 3 aspects of churches match that expectation? And I don't know if they really could, because the churches weren't designed strictly for Mars, strictly for Zil, strictly for Chris. Like it was they're catering to the needs of a lot of other people, and so at its core, I think that that my experience in certain churches, and they're still different, because even within the Black churches I've been to, those experiences are different within themselves. You have the traditional Black church, and most of the time they're struggling because they're trying to retain membership.
Yep.
Their core membership is probably
62,
15 people, but their members are like, it might be 80 of them, but only 15 come consistently. So they're battling with that. So how do we love? What does loving our neighbor look like in that context when we only see the other 60-something people on holidays? White churches, that experience, same thing. Try to give like the abbreviated version. But I mean, like something that they do well is loving neighbors. But again, how they project that is hard, because I feel like in my experience in a predominantly white church, it has been, not angering people from any side, because the majority of the church is probably more conservative. So, but I feel like the fact that I think we all went to that predominantly white church at the same time. We were all leaders at that church at the same time. But I feel like, so they definitely, loved us enough to put us in leadership positions, but it was like, how far do we let them go? And how far do we let them talk before they start, messing with our funding, And so, and that's kind of the struggle I was having at the time that, I was there. Multicultural church, that's an interesting title for or interesting description for a church. You would think that ideally that would be the best church, right?
Because the kingdom would be.
Yeah, we used to always talk about that. Well, that's what heaven should look like. It's going to be looking like it's multicultural. But when you're talking about loving God and loving our neighbor, and like I said, I'm just going to continue to use Mars' model. I feel like they have the biggest burden when you start to describe your church as multicultural, you automatically place the biggest burden on you, because now not only are you multicultural, but now you're multiracial, now you're multi-political, now you're multi, all of that stuff. Now you have to deal with the possibility that, you may have people at your church that are not heterosexual. You're dealing with all of those different things.
All churches don't.
Yeah, that is.
That's true. That's true. But that's true. But I'm saying, like, along with the other
those other factors
listed above. So, along with all of that, so like now it's like that burden is huge. You find yourself sometimes in spaces where it's harder for you to address a lot of things. So now you're just trying to stay like strictly biblical, and so and sometimes, and like I said, and that for me that's a trigger, like for me, like, because you tell me in today's time, in today's culture, God got it. Just pray for him. Like, that's a trigger for me. Like, I can't just rock with just pray for him. I would love to pray as well, but it's got to be some type of action along with that. And for multicultural churches that I've attended, it's like hard for them to address that, because then they risk losing another group in their church, from addressing one thing, or, and then it's like, okay, well, that's part of my offering that's gone to, whatever, if the offering was used for paying bills or paying the preacher, the pastor, or whatever, you're losing people because you take your focus away from just the principles of the Bible. So
I think your what you're pointing at, I think, or like you just said, some of what you're getting at is the economics of churches. Some churches have to do like you already kind of laid out. Multicultural churches probably have to do more of that seeker-friendly stuff so as to get more people in the doors. I think a thought that I had as you were saying that is, one of the biggest issues with multicultural churches is that we assume that they're multicultural when in actuality they're probably white churches that are seeking to get more Black people and other peoples of color in the door.
That's fair. That's a fair thought. Yeah.
Then what is your what are the trade-offs you have to make as a person of color, still going in to a predominantly white church, trying to figure out, but now you're being put on stage as the token. But I think I want to go back full circle. Sel laid out at the very beginning. There are simple things that he looks for in churches. Loving God, loving your neighbors, loving those around you. If a church is doing that well, it's a church where I need to be at. I'm not letting y'all off the hook. Y'all still not trying to get to this question. And the question I have is, what context have made you feel that? What context? What kind of churches have you kind of experienced that well in? Has it been predominantly white churches? Has it been predominantly Black? And I only ask that question because in the song "Can't Let It Go," what he's getting at is it's almost a love song for the Black church. It's in that despite your wrinkles, And there's many wrinkles. There's a line where he talks about, where I think he's talking about the pastor and how the pastor was doing and having sex with the widows, and stealing money so he could making new windows.
Yeah, that was
interpreted that the wrong way.
That was a fire bar. Too.
It was dope. But what I'm trying to get at is, he's obviously and notably he's also a pastor. But I'm interested.
You talking about his church specifically, or the church that he's at now?
No, the church that he's currently pastor at. All that said, what I'm trying to get from you guys is, as Taelor Gray is saying, hey, Black church, I love this church. This church has been so much to me, despite your wrinkles. I can't let it go.
Mm-hmm.
What spaces have made you guys feel at home? Have made you guys, and this could be about where you're currently at, somewhere else.
Well, let me jump in here then. Because first and foremost, man, we not gonna have a perfect church. No church is gonna be perfect because no person is perfect, and the church is just the people, man.
Yeah.
It's like, and I'm as finicky as anybody, Most definitely. But with that being said, I grew up, primarily going to the Black church. I went to my aunt's church, which was a Kojic church. And I grew up skeptical of it. Although I enjoyed going there. I just grew up with a lot of skepticism. And I don't know if that's a male thing or a Black male thing.
Yeah.
I just grew up with, questions and concerns. But when I made my transition to walk in the faith of my own doing, it was in the context of a college campus with a primarily white church. And I was open to, because it had flipped my whole paradigm of what I thought about faith and what I thought about Christianity. Yeah. And I was open to what they had going on, and I took it at face value as this is the right way to go.
Yeah.
And they did a really good job at equipping, helping students build relationships and, helping us grow our own faith, minus the cultural piece. But at that point, I had convinced myself that race was a lie from the devil that was dividing the people of God. And, I had kind of detached myself from, because I came to college as a freedom fighter.
Activist.
I was an activist. And in my upbringing, I knew exactly who I was, as a Black person, and how important education was and what I needed to do to kind of help my family and my city and my people group. And, once I got to a point that I was tired with that, and, I found faith in Jesus Christ, and I kind of abandoned it to kind of follow wholeheartedly Jesus at this church. But so at the time, like, in retrospect, I'm like, that's kind of awful. But at the time, I was like, this is where it's at, and this is what I need to be doing. So I really enjoyed that time of my faith walk and compared everything since then to that time and the structure and how they had it set up, how the preacher preached, he, in a teaching manner. So it was like that. I feel like that was probably my kind of best experience before I kind of like things started to get like I became more aware or back into awareness of, my Blackness and the issues that come along with that and the lack of support.
The assets that come along with that too.
Yeah. And the assets as well. I mean, I was working the assets at that time, I was working my, my Blackness. But at that same time, I told you guys before, like that's around the time Oscar Grant died. And I was so detached. I wasn't hip to that.
Hey,
like, the church did not talk about it. It didn't come up. It did not come up in conversation. It wasn't addressed as if, that wasn't an issue. And I'm sure protests was going on across the nation, But it wasn't until I watched Fruitvale Station, I'm like, where was I? But like, cause I kind of remembered it.
Wow.
And, but I was like, I wouldn't say brainwashed, but maybe I was. I don't know. I just was kind of detached. Yeah. So did I answer the question though?
No, you didn't answer the question.
Yeah, you did.
Well, you know, and let me say this. I think what I hear in your answer is, and both your answers.
I mean, I love my church right now. It's a predominantly white church. They love God. They love neighbor. I kind of prefer a more multicultural church. Yeah. I've come to have a lot more respect and admiration for the Black church now that I look through a holistic context and take into consideration our history and how important the Black church is. I don't live in a place where there is a Black church though. So if I was back, in the urban area, whatever, or closer to Black people, I would probably attend that. But it would still have the same. It would still be the same situation though. Like I would only feel comfortable in a place where I felt like they love God and they love people.
Yeah. And so let me set this up and then I'll pass it back to you, Zil. I think what I'm hearing in both of your comments that, I agree with is, you guys are kind of reflexively trying to complicate the question with, which is, and what I'm getting from you guys is a sense of, where I go currently is not simply a byproduct of, I'm just going, I want to go to the white church. There are a lot of complicating factors. So as to say that, if you came up in a Black church and had a particularly, tough experience, or actually rather, let me say it like this, where you found God at, is a function of a lot of different things. For all of us, we were in college and had a very, very deep experience of God at college. And why we had it in college isn't a function of, well, these white people do things really, really well. But it was actually a function of we did not have Black church. We didn't have access to white churches. And one of the things that dictates that is economics again, and so we talk about where Black churches are predominantly at and what populations they have access to. And then we think about the disinvestments that happen in our community. How many of our Black churches can afford to have robust ministries at campuses, It impacts, that really impacts us because, I say for myself, I feel like, that college experience, like you said, Sel, really has coded my lenses when I look at churches, rightly or wrongly. And you take that stuff off, and so that kind of moves you away from your community in some way, I mean, part of it is just like what's on your menu in your local city, AME churches. I've had a really dope experience at AME church recently. They have no daycare. But my expectation for a daycare has been prompted because I went to a white church in college that really had it. So now I expect churches with a fraction of the budget to have a daycare. Because it's non-negotiable. Church got to have a daycare. If I'm Jesus, my kids ain't sitting next to me, which is a weird expectation, but it's an expectation. But I'll throw the ball back to you, Zil.
Yeah, I mean the reason why it's a loaded question for me is because I think the church that I'm currently at is the church that I love the most. They probably would consider themselves multicultural, but it's a Black church. It's a Black church for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
So I've had my best experiences at a Black church. However, my worst experiences were at a Black church. So, no, seriously. I found God when I attended a white church, right? Regardless of whatever other experiences I had, it wasn't until I went to that white church that it was broken down to me. you know, what salvation looks like. In the multicultural church, a lot of opportunities to lead and stuff like that. But it was going to a storefront church that growing up that was traumatizing. The whole laying of hands theology, the whole speaking stuff into existence theology. All that stuff. Like, I mean, and don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, to each his own. I mean, like, I don't like say like I don't believe in it, because I mean, I guess I've seen. I believe people have been healed, or something like that through the land of hands. I believe that some people have really spoken things into existence, I guess. But like for me, like that stuff is traumatizing. I don't like people touching me in church no more. I don't like people putting their hand on my forehead, and that's a experience that that traumatized experience came from a Black church experience. But at the same time, what I'm saying, like I've also had, like I said, my best experiences also at a Black church. I'm a fond. I was going off of Cell's model of the love God, love church. For me, my expectation is the Acts church. The church from Acts, like community above all. How we in the community. Like, how are we serving our community outside of the church? Like, are we doing community service? Are we preaching in the streets? Are we doing ministry? Evangelism. Is it how key is our evangelism to our ministry? Yeah, and I think that it works really well with the church that I go to, and it's not directly the job of the pastor to make those things happen, and so. Was kind of, it can go back to economics if y'all wanted to go there, but I mean, it doesn't have to. But like, I just think that, like, so for me, I would say, the context I love the most is the Black church, but it's loaded because at the same time, like, that's where I have my worst experiences.
Yeah, you know what, fellas, and I think the thing that all this kind of really makes me think of is, especially in today, where it's kind of, choose your own experience, because you don't have to have allegiances to your church. You can just, I want to go to church in Harlem, so you can Zoom it. There's some dope there's a dope church in Brooklyn, man, that really changed my life. It's called Mount Pisgah. They did the Black National Anthem every time. I'm like, man, if I could. What? Oh, right? Like,
look. Tangent. The Black National Anthem should be our national anthem.
Come on, bro. Come on.
I don't even know how that's not a discussion.
A real quick plug: the Black National Anthem was written by a Sigma.
James Weldon Johnson.
He was a Sigma.
All right, we'll move on. No, but what I wanted to say, or
is Chris trying to say something?
I'm just saying,
what this conversation makes me think of is, at the end of the day, you have to, when it comes to church, you're going to have to make a choice. And if you choose white, if you choose predominantly white, or structured predominantly white, or if you choose Black, Latino, Hmong, whatever, I think one of the biggest things that, I would say that, at least what we get from Taelor Gray's joint is choose. Be joined with brethren. Be joined with people of God. Have deep relationship. Have it so deep that as you grow older, you think about that place as a place only in a familiar way. When we look at Taelor Gray's song, it's literally a love song to a church. That's a deep relationship. That's a relationship that's been formative. That's been a relationship fraught with heartbreak and trauma. But ultimately a church that he's returned to. I don't know what the specific implications of that kind of relationship is, but trauma sounds bad, and it's something that we, in our current day, we try to avoid. But relationships are traumatic. You can't
let it go.
You can't let it go. In no relationship.
He got that Stockholm syndrome.
Come on, look. I mean, no relationship is without its own drama to it. Now, there's healthy versions of that, and there's super unhealthy versions of it. But what I think that we can get from Taelor Gray's song is a sense of have a deep love for the people of God in your midst. Because that's the only way we can really get closer to Jesus.
Been growing up with choirs, gay men leading songs, treated like family until they started talking. Saw this too often, now it's feeling awkward, cause it's still a part of me, the beauty and the cautious. Ain't no on and off switch, I wouldn't change those times. Something deep inside me come alive and I can't let it go. You can take me to that
I was thinking about this quote for some, like it came to me a few weeks ago before we even came up with the idea for the pod. And I didn't know how it would relate. I thought it was just cool, but as I think about it, it's I think it's it relates to what we're talking about, because especially through my faith walk, I do kind of wish I would have done some things differently. It's like when I first came to God in college in that predominantly white church. I think, because I kind of abandoned, who I knew I was culturally, and at least in a combative sense. And like, it's important to, acknowledge these issues. I mean, even saying that we were doing some trailblazing things, just being Black and being in that church and being leaders in that church.
Say that word.
We were, yeah. And there was, and I give credit to that pastor there, because he had made a committee on diversity and trying to diversify the church. It was something that I haven't seen since he left. But the quote that I wanted to share was, "It's okay to have regrets, but don't regress. You have to learn. You have to learn." So, sometimes, like, people say, yeah, I don't have no regrets. Like, everybody always says that. And I think a part of it is because, some of us have families, some of us are married, with children. And you think, like, you're saying you have regrets is saying, like, you wish your life away, or you wish you had something different or something. It's just acknowledgement of things that you could have done differently. And you could have made better decisions or something. And what do you learn from that? Like, don't let that defeat you. Don't let that keep you down. But what can you learn to make better decisions for yourself in the future, or face fears that you didn't face before? Like just learn. It's okay to regret. Don't regress. You got to learn.
It's good. Good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes it for this week's show.
The Black church showed me how to live it, and I can't let it go. I gotta hold on through all of the pain.
This pod is brought to you by the Refuge Creative Collective.
And this is the Hip Hop and Homilies show.
We'll see you next time.
Because we not alone. Can't let it go.